Okay, now we're looking at differentiating with respect to other variables. So not every differentiation question you find will have x's in it. You won't always be differentiating with respect to x. So here we have differentiate 3t squared minus 2t with respect to t. That just means you're looking at what's the power of the t, that's the thing I multiply by and reduce by 1, and so on. So in order to give us some notation, we'll say that f of t equals 3t squared minus 2t. Now, there's no preparing to differentiate, that's ready to differentiate. But I called it f of t so that I can now tell you when I'm differentiating, because I can say f dash t equals, multiplied by the power gives you 6t minus 2, because the t to the power 1, if you reduce the power by 1, it becomes t to the power 0, which is just 1. Right. Next question. 5. So here we're given a of r equals ar squared, pi r squared. And pi is just a number. It's just like a 5 or a 3 or whatever. So a dashed r is what you get when you differentiate that. So you multiply by the power, so 2 times pi, and then reduce the power by 1. 2 minus 1 is 1. So it would be r to the power of 1, which is just r. So that's using different variables. Rate of change, it's just telling you to differentiate again. So we've got, given that y equals 1 over x to the 2/3 for x not equal to 0, we're going to find the rate of change at x equals 8. So rate of change, when you differentiate, you are finding the differential, you are finding the gradient at a point, you are finding the rate of change. They're all the same thing. They're all an instruction to differentiate. So this is not yet in a form to differentiate, so we're going to prepare. So we don't want the x to 2/3 on the bottom line, we want it on the top line. So y equals x to the minus 2/3. That's not different from that, it's the same thing, expressed differently, expressed in a form that we know how to differentiate. So now we can do that. So it equals, we multiply by the power, so we have to say we're differentiating. Multiply by the power, and reduce the power by 1. So that's going to become minus 5/3. And you can see that because if you start at minus 2/3 and you're going to take away 1, that is the same as minus 2/3, take away 3/3, which is the same as minus 5/3. So it becomes x to minus 5/3. Now, we weren't just asked to find the rate of change, we were asked to find the rate of change when x equals 8. So we've done the differentiating, that gives us the rate of change. So now we have to look at preparing to substitute, because you probably don't want to substitute into it in that form. So let's turn it into something a bit more comfortable. So we know that a negative power means 1 over. So that would be x to the 5/3 down there. The bottom part of the fraction is the root, so it's the cube root of x. So there we are, cube root of x, and then to the power of 5. And that gives you the whole thing, but in a form that you're going to be able to work out when you substitute. So now we can substitute at x equals 8. And that becomes minus 2/3 times 1 over cube root of 8 to the power 5. And remember, when you're doing the cube root, you're asking yourself, what times by itself 3 times would give me 8? So that is 2. So it's now 1 over 2 to the power of 5, which is just 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, 5 times, which is 32. So that equals negative 2/3 times 1/32. And you can times the top together and the bottom together and then simplify, or you can simplify before you do it. And that gives me, I've got a negative times a positive, so that's going to give me a negative, and 3/16 are 48, so that's 1/48. Okay. Right. Our next question is looking at rate of change in terms of velocity and displacement. So velocity is the rate of change of displacement. So actually this is a very straightforward question. We've got s of t, that's the displacement, equals 12t minus 5t squared. V of t, the velocity, is just the rate of change of the displacement. You could have written that as s dash t, would be equally right, and then we just have to differentiate that. So the 12t becomes a 12, and 2 times 5 gives me 10t. And it was find the velocity after 2 seconds, so at that point we're looking for v of 2. The t is being replaced with a 2, equals 12 minus 10 times 2, which is 12 minus 20, which is negative 8. And its velocity, so that's measured in meters per second. So, that's it.